I'm not pretty, she whispered. The cowboy replied, that's fine. I need honest, not fancy. She stood at the edge of the corral, the kind of quiet that made even the wind pause. The sun was low, dipping behind the hills, casting long shadows across the dusty ranch. Clara Mae pulled at the frayed edges of her dress and let her gaze drop to the dirt beneath her boots. She hated this part, the waiting, the exposure, the way people's eyes could cut through you without touching. I'm not pretty, she whispered. The words were fragile, like glass breaking quietly in her throat. She expected him to laugh, to shrug, to say something that would prove her lifelong belief, that she would never be enough. Caleb Holt didn't react the way anyone else did. His gaze didn't waver. He wasn't impressed by beauty, nor swayed by appearances. He had been up since dawn tending the fields, breaking the stubborn soil with his hands, wiping sweat from his weathered face, and listening to the land in a way only those who love it can. He turned slowly toward her, his expression calm, steady, honest. That's fine, he said. I need honest, not fancy. Her heart stumbled. She blinked, unsure she'd heard right. Honest, not fancy. No one had ever said that to her. Most people had avoided her entirely, or worse, pitying her silently for not fitting the mold. Caleb didn't see mold. He saw her. Not the parts the world rejected, but the parts that survived, silently, fiercely. And maybe, for the first time, Clara Mae felt like someone saw her as enough. Life on a ranch isn't for the faint of heart. Clara learned this immediately. She rose with the sun, the chill of morning biting at her skin as she filled water troughs and checked the fences. The children she now cared for, Caleb's niece and nephew, watched her work, curious but wary. They had lost their mother too soon, and their father's absence left a hollow they weren't yet ready to trust anyone to fill. Caleb didn't micromanage. He showed her what needed doing and then let her do it. There was respect in his silence, a kind that didn't demand gratitude, only presence. She spilled feed, slipped in mud, burned eggs and laughed, a soft, raw sound that made Caleb smile in ways he hadn't allowed himself in years. The children began to warm to her. At first, it was tentative, a touch on the arm, a shared secret at breakfast. Then, smiles that were real and unguarded, the kind of smiles that only come when someone feels safe. Clara learned their fears, nightmares of fires, shadows in empty hallways, the ache of missing parents. She stayed up to comfort them, read stories aloud in low voices, whispered promises she didn't even fully understand herself yet. And all the while, whispers followed her. Townsfolk commented quietly. She's plain. She's too old for him. He could do better. But Caleb never wavered. His approval didn't come from beauty or flattery. It came from work, from character, from honesty. One evening, sitting by the fire with the children asleep, Clara asked the question she had been too afraid to ask. Why me? She whispered, almost to herself. Caleb's face softened. He looked at her with eyes that had seen loss, hardship, and resilience. You didn't pretend to be more than you are. And you never tried to be less. Something inside Clara cracked open. For the first time, she didn't feel the weight of being not enough. She felt recognized. Weeks turned into months. The ranch, once a struggling property on the brink of failure, began to feel alive. Clara worked tirelessly, not for praise, not for love, though both came, but because she had purpose, and purpose, she realized, was more sustaining than beauty. The children laughed more. The fences were straighter. Even the weather seemed to bend in their favor as if the land recognized her presence and worked with her instead of against her. Clara still caught the whispers from town. They didn't matter as much anymore. She had learned the truth Caleb had shown her. Life wasn't about being admired, it was about being trusted, being needed, being real. One morning, after a storm had drenched the land, Caleb found her at the fence, hands caked with mud, hair wet and tangled. She looked tired but content. You've changed the place, he said simply. Clara shook her head, smiling faintly. No. We changed it together. And in that moment, she knew, this was the first time she had ever been seen for what she truly was. Not pretty, not flashy, not enough in the world's eyes, but enough. Honest. Strong. Necessary. It was only the beginning. Storms would come. Life would test them. But for the first time, Clara Mae felt she could endure them all. Trouble didn't arrive loudly. It never does. It came as drought, as debt, as illness in the herd. It came as a letter stamped red with overdue payments. The ranch that had begun to feel like home stood on the edge of ruin. Clara overheard men in town say Caleb should cut his losses, sell the land, send the children away, start fresh somewhere else. She waited that night until the children slept. "If you need me to go," she said quietly, "say it." Caleb looked at her like she'd suggested cutting off his own arm. "This ranch survives because of you," he said. "And so do I." But survival demanded sacrifice. Clara sold the few things she owned. She worked neighboring farms. She stayed up nights mending what others would throw away. When sickness hit her hard, she still rose before sunrise, refusing to let the children see fear. One evening, during a violent storm, the barn caught fire. Flames tore through the dry wood like a living thing. Caleb ran to save the horses. Clara ran for the children. The roof collapsed seconds after she got them out. When the fire died, so did something else, the last of their savings, their safety, their future. The town gathered the next day, not to help, but to watch. Caleb stood in the ash, shoulders heavy. Clara stepped forward. "We rebuild," she said. Someone laughed. "With what?" She met their eyes, steady and unashamed. "With work." And something shifted. Men who once whispered showed up with tools. Women brought food. The children carried nails like they were treasure. Day by day, beam by beam, the barn rose again, not prettier than before, but stronger. Weeks later, at the town gathering, someone asked Clara how she managed to become the heart of the ranch. She smiled softly. "I stopped trying to be pretty," she said. "And started being useful." Caleb stood beside her, pride clear in his eyes. Years passed. The ranch prospered, not because of luck, but because of truth. And when a young girl once stood where Clara had stood and whispered, "I'm not pretty," Clara knelt beside her and said, "That's fine. The world needs honest more than fancy." Final subscribe hook. If this story reminded you that real worth is built, not admired, subscribe to the channel. Because the stories we tell here aren't about perfection, they're about people who endure.